During the past 200 years, while the peoples of the world gradually were winning their political freedom from monarchies, the major banking families of the world were nullifying the trend toward representative government by setting up new dynasties of political control, but behind the scenes, in the form of international financial combines. These banking dynasties had learned that all governments, whether they be monarchies or democracies, must borrow money in times of emergency, and that by providing such funds from their own private resources, with strings attached, of course, gradually they could bring both kings and democratic leaders under their control. Dr. Quigley believes that people should be more familiar with the identities of these clever banking dynasties. They include such names as Baring, Hambros, Lazard, Erlanger, Warburg, Schroeder, Seligman, the Spires, Mirabeau, Mallet, Fold, and above all, Rothschild and Morgan.
The most shocking thing about the assassination is not the brutality of it. It was brutal, certainly. But the most amazing thing is the way the established media today managed to pretend that there is any question about whether his murder was a conspiracy. We need to understand the images we've been looking at. This is Dealey Plaza, the scene of the crime. This is the school book depository building and the 6th floor window from which Oswald supposedly did his shooting. Abraham Zapruder was standing here with his home movie camera when he took the graphic pictures you just saw of the assassination, the Zapruder film. And this is the so-called grassy knoll. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The official government version of the murder, the Warren Commission report, found that Lee Harvey Oswald fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Dallas School Book Depository building. They tell us that the first shot missed, that the second shot hit both Kennedy and the governor of Texas, and the third shot from behind hit Kennedy in the head and killed him. But it's hard to watch the Zapruder film of Kennedy being thrown violently backward into the left and not think that he was shot from the front. This is Dr. Cyril Wecht. As the former head of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, he is the expert elected by the experts to represent them.
If you have that kind of force slamming into the rear of somebody's head, then that should drive the individual forward. But instead we have him moving backward and to the left. That suggests the very distinct possibility of another shot having been fired in synchronized fashion from the right side, the so-called grassy knoll area.
But he's not the only one who thinks there was a shot fired from the grassy knoll. These people are standing in front of the grassy knoll, and they are ducking because they heard a shot fired over their heads. The people you see running are running towards the grassy knoll, heroically trying to catch the assassins. If Kennedy had actually been shot from behind, as the government says, he ought to have a small entrance wound on the back of his head. And this is the Navy doctor that the government got to write this report saying that Kennedy did have this small wound in the back of his head. But there are some things you should know about this guy. In a standard examination, he should have examined Kennedy's clothing for bullet holes. He didn't. In a standard autopsy, he should have dissected all of Kennedy's wounds to trace the bullet's path. He didn't dissect any of Kennedy's wounds. He didn't even realize Kennedy had a throat wound. He later claimed these drawings of his were wrong, and that the wounds were actually much higher. He lost Kennedy's brain, which is still missing, and then he burned his notes. He burned his notes. But perhaps we shouldn't be too hard on him, because this guy, Dr. James Humes, had never done an autopsy involving gunshot wounds before in his life. So naturally, he was the government's first choice to do the most important autopsy in American history. Dr. Hume's story about a small exit wound in the back of Kennedy's head is today the official government version. But this is not the story the New York Times told on the day Kennedy died.